Let's talk about what's actually the first game that we are going to see in this quarterfinal. Penn State, Boise State. And, you know, I don't know. I don't no disrespect to Boise State, but I feel like Penn State got a pretty easy draw with this one. Definitely easier than Ohio State or Oregon got.
Yeah, I mean, and you remember their last game was a game against SMU at home in which SMU turned the ball over like 800 times. And so,
Right.
yeah, and Penn State forced some of those. I'm not trying to take anything away, but
No,
yeah,
Penn State's great.
a pretty nice back-to-back. And I mean, it all kind of comes down to, we kind of talked about Cam Scatterbo with the Arizona State game. Can Ashton Jeanty, who any other year is a Heisman Trophy winner right now, can he have the same success that he had all year against, again, one of the best defensive fronts, one of the best defensive lines in college football? It's hard for me to see him as a running back, man. I just feel like you can load the box. You can really limit what the other team is able to do. Whereas with a quarterback, it's so much different. Like a Heisman, how do you, I'm watching the Washington Atlanta game right now. And I'm thinking, like, how do you really limit like a Jaden Daniels, right? Like for LSU last year, how do you really like for a running back though? I do think it's a little bit different. I think Penn State's front is really good. I think that it's going to be tough for Jeanty. Now he may go for 120 yards. I don't know, but it's hard for me to see him breaking off those 8-yard runs back to back to back to back like he's done all year. And that's where I think Boise State is in some trouble. I think they'll have to, as much as Jeanty is a massive factor, and he's going to have a good game for them to win. I think their passing game has to get going, and they have to be able to throw the ball a little bit on Penn State. And that's tough to ask too with Abdul Carter. They're, the really good defensive end for the Nittany Lions. Can they block him? Can they keep him off of or out of the backfield? I think this is a really tough matchup for Boise State. I think they would, I don't know, probably be rather be playing a team that didn't have one of the best fronts in college football. And so this is a tough one, I think, for the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, so when I watched the Colorado game last night, all I kept thinking was Ashton Jeanty got robbed, right? And I'm wondering does he feel like he has something to prove? I understand what you're saying about Boise State needing to get their passing game going, but listen, Ashton Jeanty has had one of the best seasons for a running back in college football history, right? 2,500-ish rushing yards, 30 touchdowns, averaging close to 8 yards a carry. He is what carried the Broncos to 12 wins, right? He has taken the bulk of this offense, like something like 27, 26, something like that, carries per game. And they are going to need him to be on his game. I don't see how they win if he doesn't get at least 120 yards, if not more than that. And, we have seen maybe a little bit of teams being able to limit him, but not much, right? UNLV probably limited him the best, but he still had over 100 yards against them. I mean, I don't know. I just think it comes down to Ashton Jeanty. If Boise State is going to have a chance, it is because Jeanty gave it to them. He is so difficult to stop. He is powerful. He's also elusive. He's got explosive speed. I don't know. This is what the game comes down to, in my opinion, for Boise State.
Yeah, I think the other side of that too is how well does their defense play, right? And if they can make this a rock fight, I wasn't incredibly impressed with Penn State's offense, certainly early in the game, kind of first half-ish. Now their offense also didn't have to do a lot because SMU gave them 14 points off of direct turnovers. They didn't have to cash them in. They literally never took the field offensively. And so that is something that I wonder, can Penn State's offense, if Penn State only has 14 points at the half, right? And Boise State's around, even if they're not winning, if it's 14-7 or 14-3, they're still very much in the game. And the longer you let a team stick around, the longer you give them hope, the longer that doubt starts to creep in your mind, does that start to impact things? But if Penn State's offense does get going, if Penn State does score, 17 plus in the first half, does that make it where Boise State has to start throwing the ball because they need to get back into a game, right? You're almost, Penn State's best defense might be getting, their offense, getting a lead and making it where Boise State can't just rely on Jeanty. And so that's, to me, a big question in this one is how well does Penn State's offense play? Because
Yeah.
SMU's defense, I thought, did a really good job. I think they only give up 10 points, not off of turn. Like the defense only gave up 10 points in the first half. If Penn
Yeah.
State only scores 10 points in the first half against Boise State, I think we're in for a really good game.
Yeah.
We'll see again some of that
Well,
too. How much did Penn
it,
State need to push it with the pick sixes? I don't know, but that's a big question for me as well.
I mean, and I can see the argument for they're playing in the Mountain West, so I don't know if this is really comparable or not. But the Broncos had more sacks than anyone in the nation outside of Ole Miss, and they were fifth in tackles for loss. So this Broncos defense is definitely nothing to snub your nose at, right? But I think you're right. I think for Penn State, the path to success is to limit Gentry, and that way you force Madsen into those passing situations and see what kind of havoc you can create. He's taking care of the football so far this season. So I don't know that you're going to see the same kind of situation created that you saw against SMU, but it's still probably your best path, right? Is to force them to have to rely on their quarterback if they're going to win. If you're Boise State, you're hoping you don't have to rely on your quarterback really at all. And that's not a knock at Madsen. That's just when you have Ashton Jeanty, if you can run him, that's what you do. But Penn State can score, right? Like they can move the ball. So this is going to be another interesting one. I do really like Penn State in this one. I don't think it's going to be quite the blowout that it was against SMU. I think it's going to be closer, but I do think that there's a chance this is still our biggest spread of the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I like Penn State to cover here. I like them to cover the 11, even though it's slightly less than the Arizona State game. I do think they end up covering it. To me, it feels like a game that almost like when we mentioned college basketball, but where like the mid major hangs around for about a half, right, and then slowly the game gets salted away just because more talent, more physicality. I like Jeanty to go over 100 yards,
Yeah.
but I just don't know if they'll have enough at the end of the day to win. And so I think that Penn State probably salts it away. I could see this being a 14 to 17 point win. I hope I'm wrong on that. I'd love to see the upset just for the fun of it. But we all kind of remember where we were when we were watching Boise State versus Oklahoma. That however long ago, 20 years almost now. So it'd
I
be a lot of
remember
fun.
exactly where I was because it was 1 week before we played on that exact same field.
I remember that. Was that a Fiesta Bowl too?
It was a Fiesta Bowl. It was a Fiesta Bowl, yes.
So I don't know. I'd love to be wrong on this, but I think Penn State wins and covers. I don't think it's like I don't think it's as big as the SMU game, but I do think they win and cover.
So I don't think it's as big as the SMU game. I think there's a chance Penn State beats them by more than I think Texas ends up beating Arizona State by. I really do think Penn State has a sneaky good football team this year.
I'll buy it.
Hey guys, we appreciate you so much tuning into a peek inside SEC football. If you enjoyed the content, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any new content heading your way. We are live every Sunday evening and we would love to have you join us.